Hello, my pretties. Welcome to Tales from the Script. I'm your script ghoul, Daniela Saioni, dressed as a creepy Kyra Geller painting. There's about 2 of you who will get that reference, but that was for you. Welcome. Tonight I'm going to talk about some of the horror stories of set life. You remember set life, don't you? It's been a while. We'll be back soon. But I have worked on a number of, a few horror movies in my day. And I will talk about haunted locations and what to do when you're script supervising horror movies and you come across some evil. Whether or not it's the movie itself that's evil, or there are people on set that are evil. I'm welcoming you guys all. I see a number of my script ghouls, my script supervisors in the audience, and I welcome you or anybody who would like to share a story of your haunted set experiences. I can bring you on the live. I'll begin though. If you are familiar with my work, you'll notice that I mostly do comedy and action. I try to avoid horror movies for the reason that I'm very squeamish when it comes to blood and gore. And as you know, as script ghouls, we have to pay close attention to every detail that's unfolding on the screen. And for example, Nuseba wants to be a script witch. We can be a script witch. Are you a good witch or an evil witch? Either way, it's all good. Yes, I know script ghoul is sort of a derogatory term. I know. Script witch, I love it. I have been called a script bitch, I'm not gonna lie. So a script witch is apropos. Hi, Maggie. Hi, Hope. I see so many people here tonight. This witch is based in Toronto, Canada, where we have many, many haunted locations and haunted film sets that many of you may have shot at already if you've shot film and television here. I was going to tell you about some of the horror movies that I did agree to do. Because listen, for so many years, I got that phone call. You know, the Saw movies are shot in Toronto. For so many years in a row, I got that phone call. Oh, we're shooting Saw 1, Saw 2. And I would just go, no, thank you. I cannot handle watching people get murdered, you know? Side note, people have been stabbed on sets that I've worked on that weren't even horror movies. We can talk about the regular old horror shows of filmmaking at the end. But the ones I did agree to were a load of fun. And you know, just at my... where shall I begin? Oh my God. Let's start with a really simple scenario that a lot of you have been through or will go through early on in your script career. Shooting in a cemetery. How many of you have shot in a cemetery? Feel free to type in the chat. It's something we do a lot in Toronto. It's a very, you'd love to work on a Saw movie, seems like fun. I have many students who love working in horror, and every time those job referrals come in, I do, you know, I have like 5 or 6 people who are like, please send me all the horror movies, and I'm always so happy to. The Lunar Empress. Are you one of my students? I don't know. It doesn't matter. Everybody is welcome. Thank you. But yes, I know there are people who would like, you know, I worked with Lee Wanell, the guy who wrote the original Saw. I finally got to work with him on The Invisible Man. Right before lockdown, we shot the Toronto unit of The Invisible Man. And Lee is an incredible guy and a really great director. And he told me the story of how he wrote the original half-hour short film for Saw in his parents' basement in Australia. So, if I'd have known, you know, if he was directing all of them, or if I had spoken to him, I would have worked on all his movies. I just loved him. He's a wonderful human being. Hope says, I've only worked on one horror. It was fun. Got to work with fake blood. Fun, but very messy. Yes, the blood continuity is very difficult. I would have to say that. But, you know, if there's a lot of blood, you can just keep splashing blood on people. What was I going to say? Oh, yes. Shooting in cemeteries. I was actually, this is a story not from one of the horror movies I've shot in, but it's something I always remember every single time I shoot in a cemetery. We must respect the dead a little bit more than we do, because I can't even remember what show it was. We were setting up in the cemetery in the beaches, you know, the big cemetery that's in the beach. And we shot our whole scene. I was speaking to the sound recordist, a man named Greg Chapman. He's a wonderful sound recordist, Greg Chapman. But this is very pertinent information, because as we were going to leave, he was striking his sound cart and he moved the cart. And I said, Greg, look at the name on the tombstone. The tombstone just said Chapman. And that is a true story. And I've never seen anyone turn so white so fast when they realized they had parked their sound cart on the grave of someone with a grave marked in their own name. True story. We shot a graveyard scene in A Simple Favor, very famous one. I have no haunting stories from A Simple Favor. That was one of the best shoots of my life. But sometimes you know you're in the place you have to be by the signs you get from the universe. And the very cool thing about that graveyard is that Oscar Peterson is buried there. And I walked by Oscar Peterson's grave on the way to filming that wonderful scene with Blake Lively and Anna Kendrick. And I had to cry, because when I graduated from film school, who handed me my degree? It was Oscar Peterson. So you just know where you are, where you're supposed to be when things like that happen. And sometimes we are supposed to be shooting in a graveyard. But in terms of the first horror movie that I agreed to do was called Jason X. Do you guys remember Jason X? It's basically Friday the 13th. Well, basically, it was Friday the 13th, part 10. And you will hear different anecdotes about it. You'll hear me interviewed. There's a podcast I was interviewed called The Good, the Bad, and the Sequel. I would consider Jason X one of my bad credits, but so many people ask me about Jason X. That was one of the few sets that I worked on that was not haunted, actually. We shot it all at Downsview Air Force Base in North York, a very unhaunted part of the city, although it's an old war munitions storage factory. But the one thing I'll tell you about Jason X is that Kane Hodder is hilarious. Kane has played Jason for the past, 7 movies or something, maybe more than that. And Kane Hodder is a member of Mensa. I'll tell you a timing story with Jason X later on. But nothing on set was haunted. It was one of the most wonderful, fun experiences of my life on one of the worst movies that I still get asked about. Some of the kills in that, this is a true story, some of the kills in that I could not watch. And it's part of our job as script ghouls to watch the monitor. And there's a scene where one of the kids in the space camp gets her head smashed into a million pieces. It's cryogenically frozen and it disintegrates. And I could not watch that. It was very violent. People love those kills. So I'm not built to do horror movies. All my horror stories are based in my dating life, but that's another story. Oh, speaking of dating life, my first husband is a horror icon. Oh, yes. And I said my first husband, but he was my only husband. I don't know if I'll ever go back there. That was a horror show. My first husband was Jared Blankard, who played Henry Bowers in the original It MOW. That's right. Who's old enough to remember the original MOW, where Tim Curry played Pennywise? It was shot in Vancouver. I didn't meet Jared until years after that, but Jared is a horror movie icon. So I guess there's that. Niseba says, the last movie I worked on, someone is getting tortured and they didn't tell me they would be tasing her. Oh my God. I barely could watch the monitor. We have the right to not watch the monitor in those cases, but they are supposed to give us a heads up. Niseba, I'm so sorry to hear that. Oh my God. If I see stabbing or the R word or anything else like that in a script, I'm probably not going to put myself through the emotional pain of it. But I was working on a film in India where there was a cricket match that day between India and Pakistan, and there was an argument between the background actors, and there was a stabbing on set because there was a disagreement over a cricket match. I don't know if it resulted in death, but it certainly resulted in the set getting shut down for a few hours. Ewell Anderson, not old enough to have watched the original It at the time, but I remember watching it on YouTube split into 10 minutes. It wasn't Jared. Jared was good in it. He was a good actor. I wouldn't marry a bad actor, but he was an intense person. Since that was the YouTube in my late teens. Yes, right? I mean, Pennywise was so great in that. I did work, by the way, on It and It Too, just dailies. I did dailies on main unit and second unit because my very good friend Shane Scott is the script ghoul on It. And I did get to cover for her here and there. And I can tell you that Skarsgård, who played the new Pennywise, is terrifying. He's terrifying, and it's great. He's such a wonderful actor. He would only come out in full clown, his full Pennywise makeup. Terrifying. That was a haunted location. The house, we shot in this house on Broadview, where the Broadview bus turns in Toronto. That was a pretty haunted location. The director of It is so wonderful. I love him. Andreas. So Jason X wasn't that scary. Want to hear something truly scary though? We were filming Suits, not a horror movie, a television show called Suits, at the Royal York Hotel. Has anyone shot at the Royal York Hotel in Toronto? It's one of the most haunted locations in Toronto. I've shot there before. I actually shot a Warlock miniseries called The Gathering. And The Gathering was super creepy. We had ravens on set. It was really, really creepy, but nothing happened. We just felt the vibe of, we shot in the, I want to say the attic. We shot in the cupola of the Royal York Hotel, and the staff started telling us horror stories, which I didn't actually see play out in life until I shot at the Royal York on Suits. We shot there a few times, and the hotel staff were very always ready to tell us all the hauntings that happen at the Royal York Hotel. It's a very expensive hotel. We were filming, some of you in the audience may have been there with us. I don't know, some of you watching this later, type in the chat if you were there. We were filming on, I want to say it was something like the 12th floor. And we asked the staff, hey, we know a bunch of this hotel is haunted. Is this one of the haunted floors? And they said, no, go to the 8th floor. I believe it was the 8th floor in the East Wing. Come, we'll take you there. Now, I couldn't leave because I was the script ghoul. So I had to stay and keep the continuity. But 3 people on the crew went downstairs to see. They waited until midnight, by the way. We were filming an overnighter on a Friday night because that's set life. We work Fraturdays. And 3 members of the crew went downstairs, and they came back after midnight, after 10 minutes or so, white. I said, "Did you see a ghost? You look like you've seen a ghost." They said, "Yes, we've seen a ghost." That man was not lying. What they saw was they got off the elevator. I believe it was the 8th floor. They got off the elevator. They looked down the hall, and the man said, "Every night at midnight, a man in a long purple Victorian coat comes out of that doorway, walks down the hall, and disappears. Do you want to see?" And they said yes. And all three of them saw it. They said it was terrifying. Terrifying. So who knows what went down in that wing of the Royal York? There's a whole other wing. I can't remember I think it's also East Wing. Most of the hotel is used in the West Wing. If you go to the East Wing, there's a dining area that used to be a ballroom. There's many ballrooms in the Royal York Hotel. And there's an unused wing that we were filming at. And the staff said, "We're only here because the film crew's here. We don't like walking to this side of the hotel." And I said, "Why?" And they said, "Well, we often hear music and dancing and laughter coming out of this empty ballroom. And you'll hear plates crashing, and you'll hear all manner of things going on, and with nothing, no one is there. You'll hear the sound, but no one is there." The hotel staff said they don't like to use the elevators going to that empty ballroom, but film crews, set life, we get to shoot at all the haunted locations. For those tuning in late, if you are interested in talking about your own haunted set stories, just type in the chat and request to join video, and you can join me. I have a doozy. I haven't hit the doozy one yet, because I worked on a film called The Craft Legacy, which is about witches. And the original Craft, the original movie, The Craft, in the 90s, that was shot in California, had several hauntings and other stories attached to it, curses. How do I know? The producers told me. The producers said the original film was cursed. There were lots of things that continually happened during the shooting. And here we were in Toronto. We filmed at an old Catholic, what do I want to say? It's a home for wayward women who, in the pre-Victorian era, had immigrated to Toronto and had children out of wedlock, and they had nowhere to go because they were shunned by society. So they were all housed in this old Catholic building, not a happy place. And that's exactly where we shot the main house for The Craft Legacy. And it was the most haunted location I have ever been in. How did we know? We felt the energy, of course. The whole crew, and I'm talking gnarly grips, like big men, felt the energy and were humbled by whatever was going on in the air in this location, which was the main set, one of our main sets in The Craft Legacy. Our wonderful lead actress, who's now starring in the movie Priscilla, and I'm blanking on her name, such a wonderful actress, put her phone down to go and act in the back room, which was the most haunted of that entire location. She put her phone down, and she came back to pick it up after the take, and her face was white, and she showed me, and it was a big bright light. Now that in and of itself is a little weird, but it was what had happened during the take that made it even more weird. And I think some of my crewmates on The Craft Legacy might be watching this, so they can verify. She was getting ready to do this take. She was doing the take. We were setting up. We were about to call rolling, and I hear the DOP shouting, Can everyone get out of her light? Just get out of her light. Oh, Kaylee. Her name is Kaylee Spenny. Thank you, memory. Kaylee Spenny. Can everyone just get out of Kaylee's light? And everyone said, no one's standing in Kaylee's light. On the monitor, she looked normal at first, and suddenly this pall of darkness had befallen her, so it looked like there was a shadow over her. We looked around, we investigated. No one was standing in her light. It was terrifying. The whole crew got a shiver up their back. And we had 3 witches on staff, by the way, on that show. 3 witches paid to protect us, to make sure that the witchcraft in the movie was authentic, all of that. And one of the witches had to come and sage the entire space that night and get rid of all the bad energy, because stuff was breaking. Lights were shutting down for no reason. They were flickering and shutting down for no reason. Toronto is a very haunted place. If you've ever shot in a haunted location and want to share your story, just come join me online. I actually do have some craft, not witchcraft. Well, maybe it's witchcraft what we do as script supervisors, as script ghouls. I do have some craft tips for you about how to handle script supervising horror sets. That's why this is called Tales from the Script. I will do a proper YouTube video on it, but I thought, let's use our live time, our pre-Halloween live, to tell ghost stories. Yeah, I don't know. Did you find any of that scary? It was terrifying. It was terrifying to see, because we're watching the monitor, to see this shadow befall her and to hear, no one is standing in her light. Okay. What was I about to tell you? I was about to tell you something else. Some craft stuff. All right, let's talk about, does anyone have any horror stories, any haunted locations in Toronto that you know of? Have you ever seen a ghost? I see ghosts. I've seen them and I see them. I didn't see anything on the craft, but I felt it. I felt it on the gathering. I even felt it on Suits, even though the ghost was not on our floor. But that just could be Fraturdays. Am I right? Fraturday is when you start work on a Friday and you end on a Saturday, thereby negating your life. You start to see things. You see things. You see a lot of things. Working on set. Who here is? I know we're all missing set life right now, but maybe these horror stories will comfort you. So when you're timing a horror script, my friends, please allow a lot of time for suspense. So for those who don't know, script ghouls and script witches pre-time scripts. And we do that so that the production knows that they have enough story, or they know whether they can cut story, because time is money, right? So if your script is very, very long, you don't need to put your crew through that, especially if you're shooting in a haunted location. You don't want to stay there one more day than necessary. So a very important part of our job in prep is to pre-time the script. And if you're timing horror, just remember that the genre conventions stretch time out. The genre convention, as I learned on Jason X, I timed, this is a true story, it was the worst script the script was pretty bad, but my worst timing ever. I am a script ghoul who is known for my timings. I have been paid hundreds of thousands of dollars over the course of my 30-year career to time scripts for that are bondable, and I was so wrong about Jason X. And the reason is, I was not a horror script supervisor. That was my first horror movie, and I'm a comedy script supervisor. So with comedy, we go fast. Doesn't have to be good, it just has to be fast. That's comedy, right? No, I worked on some good comedies. So I was laughing as I was timing Jason X, because it is pretty funny. It's pretty camp, but I wasn't taking into account the fact that Jason walks like this. If you watch the movies, they said, Daniela, when I came to the producers and said, your script is short, they said, Daniela, have you ever watched a Jason movie? And I'm so old. I said, yes, I watched the original in the cinema in the 80s. And they said, yeah. Do you remember how Jason walks? I was like, oh. And they said, the movie's not short. It's probably long. And time was stretched out like this. Every time we shot a scene where he was about to kill them, we didn't know how far away Jason was. We didn't know, there was, I was so wrong. So when you're timing a horror movie, take into account the genre conventions and the level to which they will stretch out the suspense. And they'll play a lot in musical stings and musical scary movies. All right. One of the, you can type in the chat if you have others. One of the annoying things about doing continuity on a horror movie is all the blood continuity. Listen, there was another filter I could have chosen that had like massive blood all over my face, and I get so grossed out by blood. So no, I didn't. I don't say yes to those, but there have been a few. Some of the kills, even some of the dramas I've done had blood. So for those who know about breaking down a script for story days, one of the many things I teach you in my script supervision training program, but breaking down a script for story days, it's much harder when there's only one story day. And with horror, that is often the case. It's one scary night where there's a murderer on the loose, like Jason X on a spaceship, which was the plot of Jason X. On one night, there's all these kills happening and all these characters who are confined. What that means for continuity is that they're wearing the same clothes for the whole movie, but the clothes are getting progressively ripped, bloodied, shot, whatever the script calls for. And they usually call for a lot like that. And so keeping track of all that blood continuity, because for those who don't know, films are shot completely out of order most of the time. So to track that, we have to make a plan in prep. Costume has to make a plan, makeup, and inevitably, when you get to set, there's always going to be somebody who says, more blood. Inevitable. And then someone else is going to say, we need to do a take with less blood so we can sell this to television. And so the continuity goes from more blood, even more blood, to less blood. We want to sell this to television. So stuff gets intercut. And as I say in my training program, shit happens. And I say that because we have no control over what happens, which of those takes they're going to choose, and which of those takes they're going to cut into the movie, even though we tried it 3 different ways with the blood levels. So blood is a horror story when it comes to script supervising horror movies. What else can I tell you about the craft? Bullet hole continuity, same idea. How many bullet holes were in Kane Hodder's, in Jason's armor, his costume? That was a continual continuity question we had on Jason X. Okay, and I spoke a little bit about Skarsgård's work in It and It Too, and how acting-wise, there are some realities you want to respect when working with actors. If someone is playing an intense villain, and we saw this on Suicide Squad as well. I worked on second unit, but Jared Leto stayed in character the entire time, which is not a nice thing, to stay in character as the Joker. You've heard the stories. I'm not going to tell the stories on Instagram. You've heard the stories of stuff that went down. But when someone is playing a villain and they want to stay in character, you'd best keep them away from set, is all I can say. For the actor's sake, and for the crew's sake, and for the cast who have to be scared the first time they see that person. So with the kids on It, Skarsgård was very wise to stay in his trailer until Pennywise was needed on set. that was really good makeup. Whoever, I can't remember who the makeup artist was. Whoever did makeup on that was a genius. And coverage. So for those who don't know, script supervisors, script ghouls, and script witches are very involved in the coverage conversations in all genres. And we have to be fluent in the genre that we're working in. So if you've never worked on a horror movie, just like when in 1999, I had never worked on a horror movie, and there I was working on Jason X, which was probably the least scary, let's face it, horror movie I've ever worked on. You've got to study the tropes of that genre. And oh, by the way, that director, he was a lovely director. Jim, who directed Jason X, we share a birthday. He's no longer with us. R.I.P. Jim. He was amazing. But we shared a birthday, true story. And he was all excited. As you know, my students who love script supervising horror movies, they love it. And like, there's just people who are so into it. And Jim was one of those people. And he was a special effects makeup artist who got his big break directing Jason X. R.I.P. Jim. I sometimes forget that he died. He died of a rare disease sort of early in life. But he got to do that film, which for him was the movie he wanted to make. He helped come up with that idea too for where it was set. Coverage, yes. So it helps you time the script if you get familiar with other horror movies along the same lines. And listen, there are different shades of horror. The Saw movies are on the violence kind of side, right? Even Seven, which is in many ways, it's a cinematic masterpiece. Terrifying. I don't think I could have worked on Seven. I think I would still be having nightmares. I could barely watch it. My friend didn't let me watch Silence of the Lambs for 10 years. She said, you're going to be too disturbed. I'm not going to let you watch Silence of the Lambs, even though it was her favorite movie ever. She wanted to go into criminology when she saw Clarice in that movie. Finally, I watched Silence of the Lambs, and it was wonderful. But I mean, like, I loved it, but it was pretty disturbing. So coverage. So yeah, one of the questions I would ask the director in prep, if I was working on a movie where I wasn't sure about how the dynamics were going to go, how are we treating, the kills? Like, how much of the kills are we going to see? And in horror, you tend to see more of them, right? How much blood are we allowed? That's a question I would ask the producer, and I would talk to the director about. There's often a difference of opinion on blood levels. Nowadays, because I come from a time long ago, I started script supervising in 1991. But nowadays, you can add blood with CGI. You don't have to spray literal blood anymore, but let's face it, many of us do, who are filmmakers. Just like you don't have to use real bullets, and some people do because they want the recoil. Let's end that bullet thing, shall we? But there's a lot you can do in post VFX with, if there is a blood continuity error, you can actually fix it in post. But it's great when all these discussions are had in prep, and you can resolve a lot of what the arguments are going to be on set with prep. And by that I mean with conversations. How about that? Some people are scared of conversations. Don't ever be scared of conversations. They solve more problems in the world. And they certainly save money on film. Hi, Allison. Just telling them, I told them some of the set hauntings that I've lived through. And then now I'm talking about the realities of shooting horror movies from a script supervisor's perspective. I guess there are some horror movies I wish I worked on. Let me think. Nah, usually I say, you know what? I didn't get that one. I'm good. I like the ones that are on the psychological thriller sort of end of the spectrum rather than the gory kills. But I would definitely discuss the gory kill factor. How much blood are we going to see? How are you going to shoot this scene that involves, torture or etc.? I would talk that all through with the director and the DOP, like depending on, I was going to say depending on the level of prep we get, but I'm always negotiating for enough prep time, especially in cinema. I guess there are horror TV shows, and I've never worked on a horror TV show. The Gathering, the Warlock miniseries I told you about was a movie, but we did have prep time. We did have a lot of prep time to talk. The other kinds of horror stories on set that are far worse than anything I've ever said, I've said to you tonight about working on horror movies, is when people don't understand the role of the script supervisor. This is why you'll see me come on here live and teach my courses and do my YouTube talks, when people don't understand where our role, what our role is in the first place, how you can utilize us in your work if you're a director, if you're a DOP. And listen, I do have a masterclass happening called Axis Schmaxis, which is how to deal with the axis of action conversation on set, which if you're a script supervisor, you know, sometimes you're the only person who knows where that elusive line is that we're not supposed to cross. I treat it as a tool, not a rule. And I've been educating directors, camera operators, DOPs, and script supervisors about coverage and the axis for over 30 years now. If you're interested in avoiding that horror show, the horror show where the DOP, the director disagree on what an eyeline, where an eyeline should be for the edit, how do you resolve that? All of that stuff is going to be covered. It's in the link tree in my bio. I call it Axis Schmaxis because that is what directors who don't want to know about the axis of action, or who want, because they don't want to take the time to learn about it, or they don't, and I'm not the Axis police. I'm someone who understands it fluently as a tool, and that's why I love teaching it. But they think you're the Axis police, so they treat you like you're a script ghoul, like you're there to ruin their movie or something. That is a horror show that I like to prevent by educating people on things like coverage in the Axis and how to work productively with your script supervisor. Listen, the A-list directors know this. I was telling them that Lee Waddell, who wrote the original Saw movie, I got to work with him. He's Australian, on The Invisible Man on the Toronto shoot. I got to work with Lizzie Moss as well. He's just wonderful. The amount of collaboration that we got to have, the amount that he involves the script supervisor in the coverage discussion. Hello, Lunar Express. I would love to work on something set in New Orleans Cemetery. That would be amazing. I loved being able to just visit those casually. Lunar Empress, where are you based? That would be wonderful. New Orleans. Oh, that's who I should be interviewing right now, is Shane Scott. Ms. Shane Scott, who did It and It Too, also did Dracula, the new Dracula, the one that was shot in New Orleans. I mean, let's face it, horror is the DOP and a chief lighting technician / gaffers. That's their medium. Lighting is so much in that world, right? It would be fun. As you know, I'm also an actor. It would be actually really fun. The only roles that people have pitched to me for me have been like victims. Like, yeah, no, it would be fun to play. Well, I don't think I could play a villain. I don't think I've got that evil vibe. But, maybe I could do a Clarice Starling, maybe. The Lunar Empress. Oh, it's Jasmine. Yes, and you are a director whisperer. Hi, Hope. Is New Orleans a good place to be for a film and TV? Yes, it very much is. Oh, sweet, I'm thinking of moving down that way. Hope, it really is, because they have a scary good film and TV tax credit, just like New Mexico. So New Mexico and... is it Louisiana? Yeah. New Mexico and Louisiana have excellent film credits. That's why so many people shoot there and are based there. It's also very cinematic, let's face it. It's very cinematic New Orleans. Any questions? Any questions about anything about my program? I'm here if you would like to ask me about my Director Whisperer training program. Most of you here are in my program, but if you are interested in joining us, join the brood. Join the brood. I will help you. I will help you get to a career that you love, whether it be in comedy or in horror or in action or whatever you love about script supervision. Hi, Julia. Sent to a really creepy cottage for 8 days alone after catching COVID on a BBC Scotland. Scotland, there's a very spooky place to shoot. Hebridean shoot, all creepy dolls and 1970s decor and hundreds of churches. Whoa. Like The Wicker Man. So good. That sounds like fun to shoot and no fun to be alone in. Wow. Is it true that the portal to hell is in Jimmy Page's basement of his castle in Scotland? That's the rock and roll rumor. I want to know if that's true. I mean, if you believe in those things. I've heard that the crew is hired out of LA first. So yes, there is this thing that is happening. It's kind of a scary thing in the industry where they'll hire out of LA because the rates are much lower. The union rates are lower in LA. So they will hire the crew out of LA to go work in Atlanta or work in New Orleans, etc. Because Atlanta's in Georgia, which is a right to work state. Long story. Another one of the horrors of the film business. You know, I used to come to LA to enjoy myself and to create, to write screenplays. And the last couple of trips were it was very sad. I hope it turns around. Like, because you guys have some of my best and most favorite students are there and friends. And I would like to come back and enjoy myself in Los Angeles again. People are just joining us. I've been doing a live about my work on horror movies as a script supervisor. If anyone wants to tell any stories, come back, says Allison. I know, Allison. Allison, you're there. Is it getting better? Is it getting more fun? Is it getting more happy? You know what? It's probably a world thing. I'm blaming LA, but it's probably a world thing. It's probably not just LA. It's just not that pronounced here in Toronto, you know? Maybe because we've got so many other things to worry about, like haunted locations everywhere. On Halloween, I'm going to go give out candy at my friend's very haunted home. He has a very haunted, wonderfully American Gothic style home, and we're going to give, I don't know what to wear. Should I go? This is my costume. I'm a creepy Kyra Geller painting. No one will get that, except Kyra. Yeah, maybe I'll go anyway. Maybe I'll be like, I'll go as a script ghoul and just bring my stopwatch or something. Okay, everyone. Well, if you're interested in training with me as a script supervisor, there are links in the bio in my Instagram. It's bit.ly/script supervisor. If you just want to train in Axis, because perhaps you're already a script supervisor and you feel like you just need that little bit of training, come join me in Axis Schmaxis. I didn't scare you at all, did I? I didn't scare you off from wanting to do horror films. Now you guys want to do horror films even more, I'm sure. I think I told you everything I wanted to say about horror. If I think about some more, I'm going to create a YouTube video all about it. And thank you. Thank you for tuning in. May you have an excellent Halloween. Have a great and wonderful night, everyone. I never know how to turn this off.